new look for the channel, hoping to keep those 2 subscribers happy. I typically pride myself on playing more obscure titles, except for Call of Duty last episode, but I'll continue with the relatively popular games with F-Zero for the Super Nintendo. As probably one of the greatest racing games for the system and being one of the launch titles for the Super Nintendo, F-Zero has quite the high status among retro gamers. While there are certainly other great games that launched with the system, like Super Mario World, F-Zero really showcased the processing capabilities of the Super Nintendo and what it had to offer over the NES. There's such a feeling of speed in this game, which was new for racing games as older games couldn't process data as quickly as this could. I do think it's a great game, but I do think it also gets overhyped and overexposed because of the impressive graphics. But I do still think it's an amazing game, and one reason I believe it deserves praise is for its utilization of the shoulder buttons. Yeah, we all take the buttons we have on controllers for granted nowadays, and a lot of Super Nintendo games don't fully utilize all the buttons like F-Zero does. It truly felt like the first game where you had to use both thumbs and pointer fingers to play better. And the music is phenomenal. You can do a quick search on YouTube or Google and find remixes of any of the songs in this game. The populace absolutely loves this soundtrack. One thing I will say bothers me is the difficulty. Not even that it's just hard to win, but it's hard to advance in the little championship series you can race. Yes, there are 3 or 4 difficulties you can choose from, but the easiest one was still hard for me as a kid, and you kinda had to practice to get better. It's a smaller nitpick, but it turned me off as a kid because it wasn't very forgiving for a novice player. What also isn't forgiving, even someone playing on the master difficulty, are the walls and other ships. Where do I even begin? I get that you shouldn't touch the walls in a racing game, but if you make one slip up and touch a wall, you're basically flying all around the track, and it's essentially game over if you get caught up in the wrong spot. The same thing goes for other racers, but they're in the middle of the track and move around and even come up from behind you and hit you. It's seriously like fucking pinball. A fucking pinball machine on a racetrack in the future, I think. Not to mention, the final track in the Queen League has a jump that you really have to be going fast to clear the jump, and I've never been able to make this jump. Maybe make a jump like this for a shortcut or something, but it should not be an integral part of the racetrack. Another thing I think could have been dialed back is the explosion sound effect when you crash out. That thing's fucking loud. I mean, it's an explosion, it's supposed to be loud, but I'm trying to play this at night while other people are trying to sleep, and this shit fucking explodes and blows out my speakers. Like, damn. Which is just one of the reasons I vastly prefer the time trials. The time trials in racing game almost never interest me simply because it's very monotonous racing around the same track multiple times in a row with the same car, blah blah blah. And also in other racing games the tracks are much longer, whereas the tracks in F-Zero are usually about 30 seconds to finish a lap, so it goes by pretty quickly. And in the time trial there aren't any other drivers to mess you up and you barely hit any walls to lose damage. It's great! It can be a little difficult to determine which car to use too. I usually just use the really fast pinkish one and hope not to hit anything, and that seemed to get most of the low times on courses. I stand by the fact that I think this is one of the greatest racing games, not only on the Super Nintendo, but of all time. I truly think it's that great. But it's still not perfect, and I don't think it's anywhere close to where people believe it is. It's not a, oh wow, this game's hard kind of game. It's more like a, you either do it perfectly or don't even bother putting the cartridge in type of game. It just demands perfection, and that can turn people away. Let's see where F-Zero falls on the list. This is my opinion of quality anyway, and while it is a legendary Super Nintendo game, it's just not my cup of tea as many other people view it. Still a great game though. Alright, time to wrap up. Thanks for watching. If you like this, be sure to check out my channel for other reviews. See you next time.